Next up, a topic that's near and dear to all of our hearts, keeps all of us up at night, profitability. So we've assembled some of the industry experts here to be able to go through and discuss their best practices around profitability. Led up by some who may call the GOAT of profitability, Marcel from Parakeeto. Courtney from the Ad Girls, John from Avex, Tiffany from Lim Media, and Matt from Harris Webworks.
Thank you. You guys see, that was very, very quick. He was gonna pronounce my last name and then realized there was nothing at the end of that and switched it up. That was great. All right, pull up a chair, everyone. I'm gonna call a quick audible here. I'm getting like basement of a church seminar kind of vibes off of the audience right now, and I feel like we need to change the energy up. So I wanna invite everyone to stand up out of their seats for a moment. We're gonna do a quick activity. What we're gonna do is you're gonna turn to the person next to you and you're gonna challenge them, not yet, in a moment, you're gonna challenge them to a rock, paper, scissors match. It's 1 of 1. The way we do it is 1, 2, 3, draw, but here's the deal, here's where it gets fun. If you lose, you become that person's hype man, and we keep dueling until we have 2 people left, and we have an epic rock, paper, scissors battle, and whoever's team cheers the loudest, typically their champion is gonna win, okay? So we keep swallowing up other teams until we have 2 mega teams. This will go quicker than you think. So it's rock, paper, scissors, draw, go!
Okay, rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Yes. There we go. Do you wanna get out there and play?
No, I don't. I think it'll.
I need.
Who won? Who won over here?
I need you to hype up your partner.
Good job, I won too!
Hype them up.
Yeah!
Let's hear it. You gotta cheer for your champion. I just needed to get them woken up.
We needed something.
Yeah.
Get them all riled up.
Give me a second to plug my iPad in too. Can we get this plugged in?
How's my hair?
Can we plug this in?
Great. Yours looks great. Fantastic.
Let's go. Make some noise for your champion. Let's go. I want to hear you. All right, you got to keep swallowing up teams. We need 2 final teams. We got a team over here. We need a challenger. Okay, who's left? Put your hand up if you're still in the game. All right, let's get the finalists up to the front. It's the runaway train. We got one over here. All right, who's still in the game? Bring the finalists.
Yeah, you lost the crowd.
Let's hear it for them, guys. Sorry, they'll figure it out. Let's go, let's cheer them up, let's cheer them up. All right, who's the champion? Right here? We got a winner. Let's give it up for him, guys. All right, have a seat, have a seat. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Agency Profitability Panel. I'm pleased today to be joined by 4 very experienced agency owners. We've got Courtney, John, Matt, and Tiffany here. And before the panel, I went through and asked them some questions about their businesses and what they do, and I try to find some things that I think are really compelling about what they're doing related to profitability. So I actually want to start with Courtney. Courtney, you're doing something in your agency that I think is really fascinating that most people may not have even heard about, which is called a results-oriented compensation model. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about what that is and how it works?
Yeah, so when I was an intern, I started working at a company that worked in a results-only work environment, and it basically ruined me for the rest of my life because it allowed me to create my schedule in whatever way I wanted, and it's what sent me into entrepreneurship. So the way that I think about compensation and the way that I run my company was always based inside of that structure of how could we make this more about results and less about the hours that you're spending and what about these margins and what about that. And so I actually pay my team entirely based on the results that they create, and then they get to create whatever that looks like under that. So if you get one account, you get one pay structure, and then you get bonuses on top of that and additional compensation if we get more ad revenue because you created a scaling program that worked, you also share in part of that profit share.
Does that sound insane to anyone? Hand up if that sounds crazy, something you've never heard about. So it's working extremely well.
Yeah.
I think the backstory is profitability was in the 20% range when you joined the company. After you implemented this, it's more than doubled. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 41%, and we maintain between 45 and 50% profit margins at scale month over month for the last 2 years.
How many of you think that's insane? Show of hands. Yeah, pretty crazy. So there's a fundamental reason why this works, and we're going to talk about that later, but how did you arrive at the compensation model? What's the math behind it?
Yeah, so I look at what are the expenses that I want to pay my team in order to deliver this service. I want to keep that at about 35%, and then I know that I have multiple people that are going to be responsible for delivering that service. We actually merged the account manager position at traditional agencies and the media buyer position into one, and then we take 20% of our fees and we give that directly to that account manager. So it actually becomes a position that's really well suited for people that wanted to run an agency and then figured out that they actually didn't want to do that at all. And so they get to come in, they get to own their clients in a really big way without having to deal with a lot of that back and forth. And they prove their skills really effectively too. So it creates this beautiful entrepreneurial ecosystem.
So the thing that's fascinating to me about this is the challenge that we have as agencies typically is that we don't know what our costs are going to be when we sell something to a client because it depends on how much time it took a lot of the time. But what you've done is you've just removed that variable by saying the cost is fixed because I'm paying you as an employee this amount of money, and if it takes you an hour to do the work or if it takes you a year to do the work, it doesn't matter, you're getting paid the same amount of money. So that, I'm sure, has come with some great upside, but also some challenges. What are some of the prerequisites that you feel somebody should have before thinking about implementing something like this?
Well, you have to have really clear processes. You need to be really clear about what it is that you're providing. So we are a social media advertising agency. We have really specific scopes that we have and really specific ways in which we do not scope creep. So our prices are really fixed, our boundaries are really strong. We know what it is that we're providing and we back up our team on how to provide that service. So I think that's a really important piece. And then I think it's really important to understand, like, for yourself, what are your costs? What is reasonable? Because you could start, like, I have had multiple different pricing models and pricing structures of how much do I actually need to charge in order for this to be profitable. And so you have to have a lot of clarity on, like, what it is that you're providing, right? And, like, those margins as well.
Yeah. I have one last question on this before we move on. What was the biggest challenge to navigating from a more standard model to this one that you had to get over?
I actually started my business with this model, and I've been advised by millions of people along the way that I shouldn't do it, and I've given it up, and I've always come back to it. For me, the most challenging difference is that, I mean, it's all like double-sided, but the team that I get to work with is so talented, but they can get bored really easily, so I have to, like, manage my team in a really different way than I would a normal, like, employee type person. I would say that's probably the biggest challenge.
Fascinating. I want to open it up if anyone has commentary on this.
Shout out to Courtney. My name is Tiffany Yarde again. Hello. I have to give you your flowers because what you've done is flipped a very traditional model from the law firm world called AFAs, alternative fee arrangements. And so I come from a world many moons ago, for over 15 years, in energy infrastructure, project finance, and security litigation space. So think toll roads in Mozambique, Chilean Railway, and the amount of people that have to come together to get those deals done, executed, and making sure people stay out of jail. So ultimately, being able to come up with a one fee in the law firm world called contingency fees is really a wonderful way to look at it for an industry like this, in this tech space. So kudos to you in that. I would say if taking that into other aspects of this space, which I guess is a question, for the panel, A downside that we saw in law firms, just as, again, this is an example of my prior life, is that if you don't have enough history to gauge what type of expected outcome you're looking to achieve, how many other firms you need, how many other specialties you need, you may very well price yourself out and eat your margin in less than 6 months. And in that case, you've now flipped the negative. So I'm very curious, how do you mitigate that in the social, again, forgive me.
It's a great question.
How do you mitigate things like that? Because again, I love, it's brilliant.
Yeah, what the service that I provide are Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok ads. So it's like actually really, like I've been doing this since 2010, like from the beginning. So like I actually know really well the services that I am providing and the services that I am not providing. If it is not related to an ad, I am not doing it. I have partners that will do that. I have people that I can connect you to do it, but I have a lot of clarity around what my packages are and what they are not.
Ooh, and that is profitability queen right here. I give you that title because when you're not working in your business, you're working on it, which is what you want to do. So shout out to all of those who are agency owners who are in the building, coming 10,000 feet up. Profitability, just kind of talking about what it is from this scope. You can pay people to run the reports, run the numbers, run the ratios. Someone to come at you every week with a report, but what are the questions you're trying to solve? And shout out to every panel that I've heard today. You've got it right. Those who are looking at the big questions of, okay, who are our customers? What do we want to achieve? All of those things, but specifically, where am I bleeding right now? Especially considering where the market is right now. How do I become the lean, mean machine? And I think when trying our best to set up systems and structures where every dollar, you know where it's tied to, specifically client codes, there's some agencies who still aren't even sure where their copies went. And again, you can tell I'm from law firm, right? And so ultimately we charge for the ink that we push out. And so what does that look like for an agency? And how do you kind of pepper that into your fee? How do you pepper that and really pad that into your fee? At Lim Media, we have a great division that I run, which is the staff augmentation division, where we kind of step in and let the agency do what they do best, sell, be the partners, be the ones who are focused in the marketing, doing their marketing better, and partnering. And what one panelist said, co-selling, which is massively important now. And so what we come in to do is find you that talent. We come in to help kind of build those margins and really help you say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost. And now you can go back to your client and tell them, hey, this is the price at a margin that you know you can match. And it's on us to help you keep that, to meet that budget number. So again, from us, profitability on that side, bringing some comfort there and some padding.
So while we're on that vein, we just talked about an example here of placing a firewall for risk inside the business. I want to dig in on staff augmentation, which is a way to do it at the client pricing level. Staff augmentation is a strategy that is used pretty extensively in IT, in other industries, but we haven't really embraced it as much in agency, but it's really, really good for highly technical, high-risk work. Tiffany, could you elaborate a little bit on why that is and how staff augmentation models, when you're selling that out to another client, allow you to still protect your margins and still absorb or, I suppose, adapt to very fluid work or very hard to scope work?
Yeah, you're kind of spreading out your risk, really, because we're all in it together. And it goes beyond white labeling. It goes beyond the fact that you're actually recruiting really good talent that you're not spending the time to find for yourself. You're also allowing us, the augmentation team, to find people that are going to be aligned with your goals, your local culture, and your team, who are going to assimilate quickly. And if there are HR issues, if there's things that need to be dealt with, then that's on us to help kind of manage. And so that comes on the people business, which is what we're all trying to do anyway. So that's the biggest difference there. Other things that I think are really challenging when thinking about building those teams, especially those that are longer term, your merchants are going to be excited to know that they've got partners who are with them for the long haul. Those lower turnover rates and having to deal with the mess of people who then brain drain you, who walk out the door 3 months into the project because communications weren't clear, those are all things you get to, again, share the burden with while you're busy building business and building a relationship with that merchant. So that's really about the biggest reward of it, sharing that risk.
So I want to take a quick step back and clarify, what do we mean when we say staff augmentation? It's a safe space. Was anyone a little confused when we used the word staff augmentation? Does everybody know what that means? Okay, so for this one person in the room who was brave enough to raise their hand, because I'm sure there's more, when we talk about staff augmentation, right, what we're talking about is this idea of we're essentially leasing a team member to another client. So typically the strategy there is they cost us $2,000 a week. We're going to build them out at $4,000 or $6,000 a week. We're going to place a fixed margin. So their utilization is 100% or their time is paid for, and it doesn't really matter if the scope of work fluctuates. How does project management and scope management change in that context? Because we've now gone from a place of, it's not about the scope being fixed, it really is a lot more about timeline management. Yeah, it's a different mindset shift. How do you have to approach that differently?
It's both. And that's where I say it's great to have a really great augmenting team, a company you can work with and trust, because if you made a promise to a client, you then put pressure on us to make sure that we find that talent fit for you, which could very well, depending on what it is, the type of high-risk deal, type of high-risk project, could very well take 6 to 7 to maybe even 9 weeks to source the talent when you told the client you want to start in 2. You need someone who really knows recruiting. You need someone who understands people, understands the right amount of tech skills needed to execute on. And I think that's the biggest, biggest draw to the staff augmentation side. Now, on the other end of that is when we come back to you, you already made a promise to a client, and we tell you, well, you thought it was $125 an hour, it might be $230 an hour because of the type of talent that you promised. Which is why having the conversations ahead of time, thinking of what this leasing model looks like for you, is something that really have, at the beginning of the year, before 6 or 7 weeks before a new project, looking at your pipeline, which again, part of the profitability discussion of the type of demand that you think you're expecting to really kind of lean into this type of model to help you get to your bottom line.
I want to switch gears completely here and go over to John. And I want to open up, one of the things that you've gotten some accolades for is being named a great place to work, having a really great culture. I want to talk about the tension that can sometimes exist as a founder when you're trying to manage, doing right by your clients and making sure they're happy, doing right by your team, making sure they're happy, and also making sure the business is healthy. You've been in the game for a while. How have you thought about working through that and satisfying all those stakeholders when sometimes it can feel like those things are at odds with each other?
Yeah, those are some great points. So I think there's a couple of things there to balance. One is client experience and how that relates to profitability and employee experience, and what language you use with your team as it relates to profit. So start with the client experience side. As agency owners, we're trying to always balance kind of that providing a great client experience, but not over-delivering so much where you're not profitable anymore, right? Scope creep, those things come up, but you also want to make sure that your project is profitable. And now as agency owners, I know that if I'm speaking to a client, I know when I need to over-deliver. I know that this client's going to be a benefit to my agency and to me in the future. So almost in real time, as agency owners, we're like, okay, yeah, we'll do that for you on the arm, free, because we know that's an investment in the future. Program managers, account managers, and some of your team members might not be able to do that as well as you because you're the owner of the company, you're able to make those decisions. So we created this system, it's more or less like a calculator or a point system to allow our project and program managers, account managers to be able to identify when a client is worth almost investing in, improving that customer experience. So some of those things might be, are they great to work with? Is it going to be a great case study in the future? Is there going to be more work in the future? So if a lot of these things get identified, the program manager, account manager now has checks and balances to be like, okay, yeah, I could, I'm not going to nickel and dime you over this next $500 change request or $2,000 change request. We're going to over deliver a little bit and make sure that the client knows that we're over delivering for them, so that we can invest in that client experience and that relationship in the future. But if it's a much larger initiative, or if they don't meet the criteria that's on this list, of course we're going to charge them. We're going to make sure that that remains profitable and that we're highly profitable. But making sure that you invest in that client experience is super important because, yeah, you could have a change request where you make a couple of extra bucks, but there could have been a much larger project in the future. It could be a great case study. So you want to make sure you invest in that client experience. When it relates to employees, a mistake that I made in the early days was kind of using the language of people over profits, which I think is a great idea on paper, and saying that yeah, we want to be able to prioritize people, whether us clients or our team members, over profits. They almost kind of took that as well, profit doesn't matter, and that's the worst thing you could possibly do as a business. So then when we started talking about profits, it was almost like, hey, this is not part of our values and our language. So kind of making sure that you communicate with your team and you loop them in and be radically transparent about, well, why do we need to be profitable? Where's that money going? How does the business operate? If we charge $500,000 for a project, I'm just not taking that home. Like, it's not going to my bank account. Like there's a lot of overhead. There's things that need to be invested. So one thing that really helped us was educating our team on how the business operates, where money is going, doing quarterly states of the agencies to be able to let them know how we're investing that. And understanding that the reason why we want to be profitable is to make sure that our team is secure, we have a cushion of cash, we can make investments into the business, and then also, of course, distribute that in some way back to the team and invest in the team.
Yeah, it's so important because when you're operating from a place of financial scarcity, it's going to cloud your judgment, and unfortunately, it's way harder to do right by your team and by your clients when that money is on the line.
100%.
Great insight.
Right on.
The last thing that I want to touch on here is the elephant in the room, proverbially, the emergence of new technology and how that's going to impact agencies, our profitability, our team, our jobs. In particular, it's AI. And I want to call on you, Matt, for your perspective on this. This is something you shared ahead of the conference. Where do you see this technology going? I think this will be a really interesting one.
Yeah, I think that, we've started using it here and there with some platforms, but I think that it's going to be very disruptive. I think B, anyone who says how it's going to disrupt is probably wrong or partially wrong. I don't think any of us really know exactly how it's going to impact it, but I think it's, I've been around for a while, so I've seen within the industry probably 4 major pivot points where technology's just really transformed everything. The internet itself being the biggest one, in the mid-90s. This could be bigger than that. It's going to change the value of human work. It's going to change how we process information, how we publish information, how we interpret truth. And I think most software is going to be AI enabled. So every single software platform out there, all these tech partners, they're probably already working on some kind of AI branded enabled version that's coming this year or next year. So how that plays out, I don't really know. I will tell you one anecdotal story that's kind of funny. My first interaction with ChatGPT was at a Christmas party, and when everyone was supposed to do skits, which is like stupid, right? And I didn't want to do it. But it's my wife's side of the family, and I'm like, all right, I got to play ball here. So I went upstairs, and they were going to do like Monty Python, her brothers. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a Monty Python skit, but just between my wife and I. So I went up on ChatGPT, and I'm like, write me a skit between 2 people that are arguing about whether or not they want to go to church. Something that I thought would be like some pivot points to be funny, right? And it was just not funny. They came back, and I'm like, I changed the names to Matt and Catherine, still not funny. I'm like, okay, just make it offensive. And it's like, I can't. ChatGPT is like, I can't do offensive. I'm a language processor, and I have been instructed not to be offensive. And I'm like, okay, fine, make it nihilistic. And it says, I'm a language processor, I'm not able to do, and nihilism has no value. So my first experience with AI, with ChatGPT, is arguing about the value of nihilism, which I think is like a good metaphor with where we're going, right? So it's not funny. It's not creative. It really is going to recreate a lot of human initiative to move it in the right direction. So it on itself is not going to propel anything, and I think there's a lot of fear around that. It's still going to take a lot of human creativity to leverage it. It's about the prompts. It's about how we use it. It's incredibly powerful, but in terms of what it's going to do, other than I think all the software is going to become AI enabled. How that changes the landscape of work and agencies. If I knew that, I'd be, on a catamaran in the Mediterranean chilling right now. So I don't know, but all I know is that in terms of, because I've been in the industry for a while, this is one of those inflection points that I think is going to be massive. And I don't know really what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows exactly what's going to happen, but I think we could agree that it's going to make people more productive. So as it relates to profitability, maybe you could get more done with less people, or those people that you have right now could be far more productive. Yeah. So it's definitely going to impact productivity in some way, shape, or form.
I use it right now as just my personal assistant. So I have ChatGPT open every day, and here's a little hack. I want to put a deck together for a client specifically for them, and I want to target like retention marketing or some aspect of their business where I think we can move the needle. I can just sit with my assistant for an hour and build a deck. Because I know the prompts. I just want like a quote from this person, a quote from that person, 3 bullet points on this, deck. I'm done with that deck in an hour. I could have taken a day, right? So there's an example. And the other is we have massive product sets that we can push through AI now, where we're doing SKU, manufacturer, product name, and any other indicator of the identity of that product, and the AI will generate short descriptions. So imagine that you had to write 50,000 short descriptions. You can now leverage AI to get that first pass done, and then someone's going through with human eyes and maybe customizing it and modifying it, fine-tuning it. But that's, it's hours, hundreds of hours of labor savings just in that one thing. So.
We've been using it for some of our branding projects, so Midjourney, to be able to like generate mood boards and like photography, and then tweak it with like the client's brand values and like the keywords that they're giving us. Like if they had no photography, instead of just using like images from around the web, we could actually create custom mood boards and images for them using Midjourney, which is pretty wild. Instead of having to source those images or even shoot that first, you could hand photographers actual mood boards of like what they really want, and then they could go actually really shoot that with a camera. So really interesting stuff.
So AI is not the biggest enemies of profitability then, right?
I think it's the best thing, one of the best things for profitability.
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's...
Exactly.
Learning how to use it is probably going to be the most important thing. But again, to your point, we don't know exactly what it's going to change.
Yeah, it's not. The biggest ones, as we talked about probably all day to ad nauseum, is stopping the leaks, making sure you know where the hell your money's going. Because you're so focused on pipeline, you're not even watching the back door. The other parts, of course, is to stop rushing. It's something I notice a lot about agencies across the board, no matter what their specialties are. A client calls, and before you've taken 5 minutes to just look at a project that was similar, being able to scope it, taking an extra 10 minutes, you've now sent yourself down a rabbit hole and literally have made so many mistakes that just, again, death by 1,000 cuts. $500 there, $1,500 there. Again, that adds up in a year. So those are the areas that I think are huge areas, especially when we're looking to get lean in with budgets. The last part, I think, is a huge enemy of profitability. It starts at the top, the tone at the top. One thing I've noticed when looking at teams is, again, I augment teams, and so I build them, right? The leaders, they seem to run on this fear mindset. Not all, but many do. It undermines profitability, it undermines innovation, and I can tell you one example of how a leader of an agency, unfortunately, just shot himself in the foot. The delivery team, the project managers, saw the leaks for 3 months, but were afraid to talk to the CEO. Talk to the CEO, the chief revenue officer about it, to say, hey, can we talk to the client together about this? There was absolute fear there. So I do use that as a word of caution to people when the language you choose, how you choose to talk to people, what you choose to say, the people over profits, finding that balance, invest the time. And if you think you lack the skills and that commitment to what that means as a leader, invest in yourself to do that better, because your teams will be better for it too.
I want to finish on this by just thanking all of you for coming up and sharing. There's such a wealth of knowledge here, so I want to encourage everyone to stop these people. I apologize in advance. Stop them as they're coming off the stage, ask them about their expertise, dig deeper into the things that were shared today. And I want to invite everyone to give them all a big round of applause for coming up. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
All right. I want to ask everyone in the audience to turn to the person next to you and share the most insightful thing that you got from the panel. 2 minutes, go. You actually have to do it. I'm going to watch you until you do. What did you like best about this session?